The bat signal has been lit. Go through the grandfather clock, secret entrance, and head back to the Batcave. It's time to revisit the Batman animated series with your hosts, Adam and Nick. In this episode, Chris fills in for Nick.
As always, I'm your host, Adam, and with me this time is my co-host, Chris. Chris, how's it going?
Doing well, Adam. Happy to be joining you here once again, my friend. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing pretty well, and I gotta say, it's been a while since you and I have done DC Comics Chronicles specifically. We've done a couple of Daredevil-centric episodes. We've done a few Ninja Turtles, and now we're back here doing some DC talk, which is appropriate because The Flash, as of this recording, is 1 week, a little bit less than 1 week away for both of us. So, in light of The Flash coming out and featuring not one but two Batmen, Chris and I discussed the idea of doing a sort of our list of our favorite Batman moments throughout all the live-action films that he's appeared in, starting with Batman the movie, which was the movie that accompanied the Batman 66 series. So that's what we're going to do tonight. And we're going to run all the way from Batman the movie, which I think it was called, all the way through the Batman. So that's about a what is it, 40, 50 something on there year gap in between.
56.
50 something, right? Yeah. 56 year history. But before that, as we always do on the show, if there's any DC related news, we tell you about it and we share our thoughts about it. And tonight there still happens to be a couple of pieces of DC news. So, as you know, Chris, and as most of our viewers and listeners will know, James Gunn and Peter Safran are kicking a brand new, sort of refreshed DC universe on film. They're kicking off officially official in 2025 with the James Gunn written and directed Superman Legacy. Now, James Gunn, having fulfilled all his commitments to Marvel via Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, is now fully entrenched and working on his DC responsibilities, chief among them Superman Legacy, and we've begun, or we're in the midst of the casting phase. And so recently we've gotten a report from the Hollywood trade deadline. This has been backed up by the other trades, that on around Father's Day or the Monday or Tuesday after Father's Day, there will be a second round of screen tests occurring, this one being in person on camera, and it will feature three actors testing for Clark Kent / Superman. Spoilers if you didn't know that Clark Kent and Superman were one and the same. And Lois Lane. So the three actors testing for Superman are Nicholas Hoult, David Cornsweet, and Tom Brittney. Testing for Lois Lane are Emma McKay, Rachel Brosnahan, and Phoebe Dynevor, or I'm not sure how to pronounce that. Dynevor, I don't know how to pronounce that. I'm not good with names. But those are the three on each side. So, Chris, let me take it away. Let me let you take it away. Of that list of Clark Kent's, do you have a favorite? Is there one particular one that you're pulling for? Or what are your thoughts on all three of them?
I mean, not really, because I'm, to be honest, not really familiar with their work. Well, with Nicholas Hoult, I am. Nicholas Hoult's been around the block for a little while. But I'm mostly familiar with him from his work in the X-Men franchise and Mad Max Fury Road. I haven't seen him yet in Renfield, which I heard he's really good in that. I think Nicholas Holt would be a better Lex than Clark Kent / Superman. I if they were going to cast him, I would think he would do really well in that role. So no, I don't have a favorite, but I'm looking forward to seeing how everything shakes out.
For me, I'm most familiar with Nicholas Holt because, like you said, he was Beast in the X-Men franchise, or one of the versions of X-Men continuity. There are multiple. I also saw him in the. He played Tolkien in the movie that was based on J.R.R. Tolkien. I think I can't remember what it was called, but I know that he played him. I haven't seen Renfield yet, but I've heard from friends of the show who have seen it that he's really good in it. Corn Sweat seems to be the Twitter favorite.
Yeah.
And the third guy, let me double check his name. Tom Brittany, I've never heard of before. Let me just. I don't have a preference. Whichever one of the three, gets the role, and here's why. One, I'm not a casting director, and I'm not a director. So, who am I to say who's right for a role when I just consume the thing? And if I enjoy the performance, hey, he was really good in this. And if I didn't, he was really bad. But I don't know the ins and outs of acting. I don't know what it requires. That's not my field of expertise. So really, who am I to say, it's got to be that person or else? So that's one thing. The second thing is there are a lot of people that are in the camp that you are, which is, Nicholas Hoult they think that Nicholas Hoult would probably be better as Clark. As Lex. But and some are like, some have said, well, I can't see, when looking at him, I can't see Superman. Well, I'm playing devil's advocate here. I can definitely see Clark Kent, and mainly because playing Hank McCoy, I've seen him with glasses, I've seen the nerdy look, you can pull that off. In terms of, I can't see the Superman, line of thinking, let me just take you back and do a little history. When Christopher Reeve was being brought to the attention of Richard Donner by the casting director, when they would bring his picture and resume up, his picture and resume would always be put at the bottom of a long pile because they couldn't see this scrawny, dirty blonde kid as Superman. Well, the scrawny, dirty blonde kid got the role of Superman, and the rest is history. So, just because you don't immediately see, the Superman look, doesn't mean it's not there. With working out, a hairstyle change, all those things, the costume itself, all those things. So I'm not willing to say, hey, I'm going to write. Look, just by visuals, in terms of a Superman look, David Corenswet has all the characteristics of the prototypical Superman, right? From the little bit that I know of the three, or of the two of the three, Nicholas Hoult is the better actor of the two, from the little bit that I've seen of Corenswet. Not to say that Corenswet isn't good. I'm just going off what I've seen. So I don't know. Again, whoever James Gunn casts, the guy's made 6 comic book properties, or 5 or 6, and I've liked all of them. So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt, whoever the choice ultimately is for Clark Kent and Superman. What about the lowest names? Anybody stand out for you in that area?
Really, the only one that I know is Rachel Brosnahan,
Mm-hmm.
and that's from Miss Maisel.
Yeah.
And I think she's great in that. I from what I've seen of her, I think she could pull off Lois. She is 32, so I don't know if she's on the upper end of the age range that they're looking for, because I know they want to go younger with Clark, and that's been stated as one of the reasons why Henry Cavill's not returning to the role.
Mm.
But I think from what I've seen of her, I think she has the acting chops and the look to pull it off.
Yeah, I mean, she's the one. Like, she has the look. I've seen a bit of her in the show that you mentioned. So, and she could definitely pull it off. She's very much in the vein of, like, I see that Margot Kidder, Bitsy Tulloch kind of vibe from her. Um, so I see it. But again, if any of the three get this, whichever one of the three get it, and ultimately if it's a wild card that we haven't seen on this list, so be it. Because again, I'm going to trust James Gunn, because so far he hasn't steered me wrong with his superhero endeavors.
Yeah, he's pretty good at casting, I think.
Yeah. So, um, I'm good either way. To be honest with you,
And it seems like as a director, he has a lot of goodwill in the industry too. So he seems like the kind of guy that people might, want to work for.
a lot of people seem to like him. I think across all the studios, even I think I'm sure Marvel is bummed to lose him. Look, Universal, I bet anything that Universal would love him to have him in his monster for their monster division, right? So a lot of studios would probably covet a guy like him. So I think DC fans are very lucky in that respect, that he's the co-head of DC Studios, and you're going to get a lot of goodwill from actors wanting to come in and work for him. So I think we're being spoiled with a lot of riches in terms of James Gunn creatively and just the reputation he has around Hollywood. Um, for me, I think ultimately, I know you mentioned them wanting to cast younger, and just to clarify, James Gunn has said younger, but he also clarified. He goes, because there was a report going, well, you're going to cast somebody who's 25, right? And he's like, I never said 25. He's like, basically, we just need to start Superman younger than 40, because if you have a 10-year plan, you're going to need this guy for 10 years. Looking at the ages, at least of the two that I know, the two Superman actors that are in contention that I know, Corn Sweat is 29, and I believe Holt is 30, 31 or 32. So by the time the 10-year, the start of the 10-year plan is in place, then I think either could fulfill the duties that are required. So I don't think Brosnahan should be disqualified, because she's 31 or 32. I think ultimately go with whichever of the people on each side that gives the best audition, that's the one who should get it. Outside of everything else, the person who delivers the best performance should get the role. Is my philosophy. So whoever gets it obviously fulfilled that requirement, and I will put my full support behind whichever pairing gets the coveted roles. And we will cover that announcement right here on this show when that goes down, probably around Comic-Con, if they can keep it a secret until the end of July. Good luck with that, or middle of July, whatever it is, but good luck with that. I don't think it's going to stay a secret until San Diego Comic-Con. Just my thought. But we'll see. If he can time security to that level, then James Gunn is already a step ahead of his predecessors. If he can manage that. All right. So the second bit of news that kind of relates to what we're gonna, the main topic tonight. As we know, there has been talk for years of an extended edition of Batman Forever. Joel Schumacher himself, back in the day, talked about it in certain interviews and such. It's a much more character-driven, a little bit darker, more serious cut of Batman Forever that totals 170 minutes runtime, which is quite a bit longer than the theatrical cut of the only cut we have of Batman Forever. I think Batman Forever is around 2 hours and 5 minutes or so. So 170 minutes would be an added 40 to 50 minutes of material. Well, that's gaining some traction because Kevin Smith, who is who we're fans of through Masters of the Universe, Revelation, and soon to be Revolution, has said that he has a copy of this 170-minute cut of Batman Forever, and he's going to review it at one of his upcoming shows that he does. So, Chris, my question to you is, would you be interested in seeing an alternate cut of Batman Forever? And do you think we will ever see it?
Of course, I would be interested in seeing it. I'm always in favor of the director's vision, being able to be seen. But specifically with this movie, the rumors that you've heard for years are that it's a much darker cut of the movie and that it explores more of the psychological aspects of it, like Batman's dual psyche. And that's one of the reasons that Chase Meridian is a character in the movie, because she's a doctor in that area. And from what I've heard from the rumors that are out there from people, it delves into a lot more of that type of stuff and not so much focused on the campy theatrics of everything. But do I think we'll ever see it? I don't, and one reason why is because so Kevin Smith says the version that he's seen has it's a cut that has like temp music, so they would have to get someone to actually come in and redo parts of the score and stuff like that. And now that Joel Schumacher isn't with us anymore, I'm not sure who takes the lead in that type of project, and I'm not sure who I'd want to take the lead in that type of project. If Joel Schumacher was still here and was able to say, yes, I want to finish this movie and I want to do my cut of it, my version of it, then yeah, but I'm not sure how I feel about anybody else getting their hands on it.
Well, I think he did say that he would have liked to. That's something that he would have wanted to do. I think in one of the interviews he said he had hoped that one day would see the light of day. So I'm going to say that I think it will get done, and I think it would be done by somebody close to Joel, one of his producers at the time, or maybe Akiva Goldsman comes in and sort of helps the process out. I think that it will happen, and I think that if it's going to happen, it's going to happen in 2 years' time, in 2025, and I'll tell you why. Because 2025 is the 30th anniversary of Batman Forever. If you're going to do it, what better time than a nice number like the 30th anniversary? So that's my feeling on it. I hope they do it, because I'd love to see it. Look, the more Batman you want to give me, the happier I'll be. And I quite enjoyed the cut of Forever that we do have. So to see a somewhat darker iteration of that interests me a lot. So here's hoping it happens. We'll wait and see. We'll wait and see how Kevin reviews it. I'd be interested to see what he has to say about it. And then If we ever do hear any news about it officially happening, we'll tell you about that if we find out about it. So stay tuned. But that's all the news we have for this edition of the show. So we're going to take a quick break, and on the other side of the break, we're going to break down our favorite moments from films, live action films featuring Batman, ahead of his multiple appearances by multiple different actors in The Flash. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
What's up, everyone? It's the Emerald Enthusiast. For all of your multiverse viewing and listening needs, check out our shows, which include Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Ghostbusters, Power Rangers, the Marvel Universe, and the DC Universe, including the Emerald Echo podcast. You can check us out on Podbean, and remember to subscribe right here on YouTube. That's the Multiverse Musings Podcast Network. From the first podcast to the last.
And we're back. And as promised, we're going to go through our favorite moments from each live action film featuring Batman. So, Chris, start us off with Batman the movie, the Adam West and Burt Ward adventure on the big screen.
Okay, so we're starting with this movie because chronologically it comes first in Batman's cinematic appearances. But I would like you to know that when I thought we were doing our top 10 Batman moments from cinema, this was my number one.
Ooh, fantastic. This is great. Cool.
I'm a big Batman 66 fan. I grew up with the movie. My name on Twitter is Commodore Schmidlap. Like, I love the movie. Yeah. So the best scene in this movie for me, and my favorite Batman scene of all time, is some days you just can't get rid of a bomb.
That is a classic. Yeah,
it's so good. It's so ridiculous. Batman running everywhere, all over this one dock, and he's being met by ladies with strollers and marching bands and all kinds of ridiculousness, until he's finally able to dispose of the bomb over the edge. Well, he tries to drop it over the edge of the pier, and there's people sitting in the boat right below him, and he has to turn around and run back. So you know, the bomb explodes off camera. You just see some shaking, some shimmying of the camera. And then Batman says how trusty that he was able to shield himself behind some pipes. It's so absurd. It's the height of ridiculousness. But when I was a kid, it didn't get any better than that scene, and it's still my favorite.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It was one of my options, but I had two options so that in case, you know, there might be overlap, I put a second option. So since you have that one, I'm going to go with my other favorite, which was using shark repellent to battle a shark or to ward off a shark.
Of course.
I love that moment again because, you know, when you watch the show, there's a level of absurdity to it that as a kid you take deathly seriously. But even though there's levels of absurdity on the show, I think the bomb moment and the shark moment reach entirely new levels of absurdity, which you have to if you're taking this to the big screen. Like, if you think about it, when a TV show makes its way to a big screen adaptation, what happens? They go bigger, right? And more extravagant. So that's what this was doing. And the shark repellent is so iconic that it recently made an appearance when Batman was traveling the multiverse in issue 900 of the main Batman series. And it was done beautifully. And I just smiled with glee when I saw it in the comic. And I smiled again when watching this clip on YouTube preparing for this show. And so that's why that moment is on my list.
Shark repellent bat spray was on my original top 10 list as well.
Okay, all right,
it's so good that I had two Batman 66 moments in my top 10.
So you know what? We're gonna have a field day when you and I sit down and review those Batman 66 comics. that DC put out a couple of years ago. That's going to be fun because we're both huge fans of the show, so that's going to be a blast. But that'll be a few episodes down the road. But next up, we're going to take it all the way up to Batman from 1989, starring, of course, Michael Keaton, who in just under a week will return in The Flash. But for my top moment in Batman 89 has to be the rooftop, the first appearance of Batman and the subsequent battle with the thugs, because that opening shot sets the table for the type of Batman we're going to see in this, back then, new iteration, right? And just like the outspread cape, like it's so sweeping and grand, and he leaps down and he gets shot, but he stands right back up because of the armor, right? And then he just proceeds to beat the crap out of those two guys. So that's the moment for me. And we had the movement double who performed that scene on an episode of the show. Me and Donnie interviewed him. The ballet bat, as he calls himself, back in December. So if you haven't heard that episode, you'll go watch that episode. Go back and watch it. It was a great interview. But that's my moment. So Chris, what's yours?
Well, I had the same moment because as an 8-year-old seeing this in the cinema, coming from knowing Adam West's Batman, this was a completely different interpretation of the character. So I had seen the trailers and the commercials leading up to the movie, and when you see those two guys on the rooftop going through what they've stolen from the family down in the alley, you don't hear him, but you see Batman appear from the back. And then they're talking about him, and the one guy is saying like he's worried about the bat, and the other guy's like, the bat, don't give me that. Like, he's just a figment of their imagination or whatever. But then Batman descends upon them, this was our first up close look at Michael Keaton, aka Mr. Mom, aka Beetlejuice, as Batman. Yeah. And he holds the thug up and he says, I want you to tell all your friends about me. And the thug says, what are you? And he says, I'm Batman. Yeah. And in that moment, you realize that this is a serious, kick-ass, take no prisoners type of Batman. And for my little 8-year-old brain, I could barely contain myself with what I was seeing. It was just phenomenal. Still my favorite part of the movie.
So good. It's just amazing. And of course, Michael Keaton would return in Batman Returns 3 years later in 1992. So, Chris, what's your favorite moment from that film?
Okay, so Batman Returns I saw as an 11-year-old, and it takes things even darker than its predecessor did in '89. Tim Burton was able to go full Tim Burton in this movie, so a lot of it didn't click with me as an 11-year-old. There are parts of it that I didn't really appreciate until like later on in life, I guess. Yeah. But my favorite scene in the movie is in the Masquerade Ball when Bruce and Selina both realize who they are. Yes. And my favorite line in the scene is when Selina says, does this mean we have to start fighting now? Because they're two people who seem to be falling for each other, Yes. And then when you see in their eyes when I think it's when Bruce says a kiss can be even deadlier if you mean it, which is what Catwoman had said to Batman previously in the rooftop scene. The two actors play it so perfectly. And what I always found interesting about this scene is that they're in like a masquerade ball, so everyone else has masks on, but they're like the two people who aren't wearing masks, yet they do wear masks in their other persona as
Yeah.
Batman and
The-
Catwoman.
but and it's funny. Their civilian identity is very much in this iteration their mask, right? So that's kind of a sort of double entendre on the whole affair. But that's a great moment, and it kind of is the predecessor to my moment, which is the aforementioned rooftop battle and then kiss under the mistletoe, because it just echoes the push and pull of their relationship so well, in that there is something there is a love there is feelings there, but there's also that, well, I'm fighting for Gotham and justice, and she is on the opposite side of that. It is very much a kind of Romeo and Juliet type of scenario for these two, and that is physically on display in that rooftop scene. And then, I mean, the kiss under the mistletoe has got to be one of the most romantically disturbing things I've ever seen, because I'm like, wait a minute, because when you're a kid, it's like it goes over your head, but it's like, well, as an adult, it's like, all right, that's just, I mean, on the one hand, if I'm like, two thumbs up for Batman because good for him, but also like she's licking him in the face, and that's like it's kind of weird. It's very very kinky, but which goes with this movie when you hear what Max Shrek says to the Penguin. But I won't. That's a different podcast. But that scene was my moment because it encapsulates the push and pull of the relationship, but on a physical, in a literal manner through their battle. And the one you talked about is more emotional, internal. So I think we covered the spectrum of both sides there with those choices. Okay, so my next choice, which is for Batman Forever, the movie that we talked about in our news bit, I'm going to go with the initial fight between Batman and Two-Face that opens the movie, the bank vault fight, if you will, because in that action sequence, we're seeing Batman do things that he didn't do in the first two Burton movies, like his movements, like the swinging, to keep up with the helicopter, the way he leaped downwards when he punches through the helicopter to get a Two-Face, and the fighting, like they're in the helicopter in air fighting, right? Like even leading up to that, like the whole scenario in the elevator, right? Where he's hanging upside down, and then that kind of stuff was so like. And this is, I know some people think this is a bad term. I don't. I think it's a great term. It's so comic booky that I was like, well, I was transfixed by it. And I still, on rewatches, I still enjoy it. And even as ridiculous as this is, like, they're showcasing in those scenes, those specific scenes that we talked about, they're showcasing his, action, his fighting prowess. But then in the scene where he's saving the security guard, he takes his hearing aid and uses it to help them get out of being locked in that vault. So they're showing Batman's intelligence and ingenuity at the same time. So I think it's a great balance, and it's kind of reminiscent of the Batman you see in Batman the Animated Series to a degree. So I love that scene, but that's my favorite. So what's yours from Forever?
I have a few scenes that I really enjoy from this movie. I was right in the wheelhouse when this movie came out. I was 14 years old.
Yeah.
I had all the posters on my wall for each
Great
individual
posters with
character.
The question mark too. Yeah.
Yeah, I was really into it. My favorite scene is when Two-Faces and his goons interrupt the Enigma party, and Batman comes crashing through the skylight to take them down. And I remember it being on the commercials, but when Batman comes crashing through the skylight, Enigma turns to Two-Face and says, "Your entrance was good. His was better."
Well, it
And
was.
of course, yeah, it really was. This was Val Kilmer's Batman getting to go 1-on-20 with Two Face's goons, who eventually end up getting the better of him at the end of the fight when he's diving down through the chute, and they hold up the red tubing that he slides through into their pit at the bottom. But the scene from the beginning of it, when everyone's just standing around or celebrating to Two Face's goons busting in, to Batman breaking in, and being a one-man wrecking crew. This was my favorite scene from the movie, but honorable mentions for a couple others, including yours.
Awesome. And I gotta point this out. This is a top that my cousin bought me one year for my birthday. It's
Sweet.
from the U2 tour in Dublin, when she went to go see them. And it's funny because obviously U2 had a big presence with Batman Forever on the soundtrack with "Hold Me, Throw Me,
Kiss Me,
Kiss
Kill
Me,
Me.
Kill Me." Yeah, yeah, with that song. So it just so happened by accident that I'm wearing this top tonight, but it fits.
I had that soundtrack for sure. I
I
had
still
the
have
CD.
that. I still have that soundtrack digitally now, but I have it, and it's as the young ones say today, it still slaps in my opinion.
Yep.
But so, what's your next moment from the infamous sequel to Batman Forever, Batman and Robin?
Man, it's hard to come up with a favorite moment from this movie because so much of it is just stuff that you try to forget ever happened.
Yeah.
But my favorite scene is John Glover as the mad scientist creating poison ivy. John Glover is so over the top. This was obviously before Lionel Luthor.
Yeah.
So at this point in time, I don't really know who the guy is.
The
But
voice of the
he's
Riddler in the
Batman
animated
the
series.
animated series. Yep. He plays it so he's such a ham, and he's so over the top with his when Pamela Isley is on to him and finds out what that he's using her research and stuff for nefarious means. He's just very, very matter of fact about it, and he says, "And now you have to die," which is how every villain should approach killing their victims, very matter of factly. But in a movie of a lot of stuff that I don't want to remember, John Glover is a high point.
All right, so because everybody who knows me knows that I really can't stand this movie. If it's okay with you, Chris, I'd like to bring up two scenes.
Okay.
So, because who would have thought I have two positive things to say about this movie other than my usual joke, which is the end credits, because it's over. But no, but so the first moment is when Bruce is talking to Alfred, and he's in the midst of having that argument with Dick Grayson. But you can't. You have to do things the way I'm telling you to for your own safety. Blah 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 blah. And he says to Alfred, who's sick and dying at this point, and he says to Alfred, he goes, "Is it really my way or the highway?" And Alfred goes, "Yeah." He goes, "Because what is Batman if not an effort to cheat death itself?" And then Bruce says to him, "But I can't, can I?" And he has this memory of Alfred, taking care of him at his parents' grave, and just the emotion between George Clooney and
Michael Gough.
Michael Gough, yeah, was fantastic in a movie that is full of nonsense. The fact that an emotionally tugging scene could come out of there is there was a movie trying to poke its way through an otherwise ginormous toy commercial.
Yeah, it is. It's a great scene. It feels out of place in
Yeah,
this movie that it's in.
yeah. The other scene is similar, but it's Batman after defeating Mr. Freeze, asking him to help save Alfred's life, and he says, you know, vengeance is easy. Vengeance doesn't give you power. Taking a life doesn't give you power. Saving one does. If you help me, I'll set you up at Arkham. You can continue your research and save your wife and be the man that she married all those years ago. And Mr. Freeze agrees and gives him the thing, and then says the stupid "take two and call me in the morning" nonsense. But aside from the nonsense part of it, that delivery reminded me so much of the way Batman interacted with Mr. Freeze during the animated series, always trying to appeal to his better nature, always trying to save him, to help him save his wife. It was very much in the vein of what George was doing in that scene, in the vein of Batman the Animated Series. So that's why I appreciated it, and it was actually delivered quite well on George's end of the equation. So those are my tied for top two scenes in that movie.
Yeah, I do like how they made it, how they tied in Alfred's
McGregor
sickness
stage one, yeah.
with what do they call it, McGregor
McGregor
syndrome,
syndrome, yeah.
which is the same thing that
His wife, yeah.
Freeze's wife suffers from. So that gives Freeze, it gives him some agency, something that he can do to be of good and of useful purpose.
Right. Yeah. So that's mine for Batman Forever. Fast forwarding from 1997 all the way through 2005. Um, I gotta go for Batman Begins. I gotta go with. There's the whole thing is full of good scenes, but I'm gonna go because it's kind of taking it full circle. The dock scene when Batman first appears, because from the villain's perspective, it's like they're in a horror movie. They
Yeah,
cannot see what's attacking them, and that is the stealth of Batman that we hadn't seen on that level uh, in live action to that point. Like it was even taking things to another level from the first Burton film, and the end of that scene where he's hanging upside down, and the guy shooting the gun is like, "Where are you?" And he's like, "Here." And then he just, that was just. I'm like, okay, that's again, that sets the tone. Is like whatever you saw before, this ain't it. Like this is a whole different ball of wax. So that was my favorite among a movie full of favorite scenes. But Chris, yours?
man, like you said, it's hard both for this movie and for the next one to narrow them down because there are so many good scenes. But for this one, I will pick the rooftop tumbler chase scene.
Mm.
From this is the first time we see the tumbler really in action. We see it earlier when Batman and Lucius are test driving it, and Batman or Bruce Wayne utters the classic phrase, "Does it come in black?" But the chase scene is the first time we see it in action,
Yeah,
and it all begins with Gordon saying, "I'll get my car," and Batman says, "I brought mine."
yeah,
And then you see the tumbler, and now it is black, like as he had requested. And you see the Gotham City, the GCPD officers and their cruisers driving on street level and looking up above and trying to follow the tumbler that's traveling on rooftops and shedding shingles and bricks and stuff all in its wake. So this was our introduction to a new type of Batmobile where we saw the sleek and slick Batman or Batmobile from '89's Batman, and then it evolved into the glowing fluorescent you know, toy seller that we had in Batman Forever and Batman and Robin. This is a new, brutal, punishing Batmobile that's not going to take any prisoners, and I think this chase scene highlights just how really badass it is.
Agreed. All right, so take us to The Dark Knight. What's your favorite moment
Oh
from that?
man, this is it's really tough, right? Because
Whichever one you don't pick, I'm probably going to pick. So go ahead, rip the band-aid
there's
off.
so many good ones, but my favorite scene from the movie is the Joker interrogation scene. Which obviously starts out with Gordon trying to get through to Joker, and Joker's playing his little mind games with him. And then Gordon gets up to leave, and Joker says, "Oh, the good cop, bad cop routine," and Gordon says, "Not exactly." And he leaves and closes the door behind him, and Batman immediately slams Joker's head into the table. From that moment, from the beginning of the scene all the way until the climax of the scene when Batman bolts out of the room to go find Harvey and Rachel, who are being held in two different locations. You're in the room with them. You feel the tension. You feel kind of the claustrophobia. You feel you feel the threatening presence of Batman. And Joker is being beaten and thrown into walls and having his hand crushed. And the entire time he's laughing because he knows that he has something over Batman. Even when he gives the addresses of where Dent and Rachel are, he mixes up the addresses so they go in different locations. So he's still toying with them even in that moment. But in a movie full of standout scenes and amazing performances by both of its two leads, I think they're both the best in this scene.
I had a feeling you would take that scene, as most people will on their list. But so I took the scene that sort of sets it up, the one where Batman is chasing the Joker, and we get the debut of the Bat Pod, and then the Bat Pod proceeds.
That was the other one on my list from that movie.
Yeah. In the middle of the street, the Bat Pod flips over the Joker's massive truck. But the scene is more than just a visual spectacle, because I think what it shows is the deeper interaction between Batman and Joker, in the sense of how destructive their relationship, as it were, is. Like it displays that what we're seeing, what we see internally in the scene that you talked about, we see played out physically in the destruction that Batman causes to get to Joker, and then the toppling of the truck, right? But all the while, when Batman could have easily run him over after the fact, he still dodged and did it. So it shows you, as far as Batman is seemingly willing to go, he won't go that far with the Joker. So I picked that truck. I was just wowed by that scene when I saw it in the IMAX theater when way back in 08. That was what a scene, what a movie, just fantastic.
And remember, seeing it in the theater, we all thought Gordon was dead.
Yeah.
Because they went to his house and told his wife he was dead. And then when he pulls off the mask and he says, "I got you, you son of a bitch."
Yeah.
The whole theater erupted because it's an awesome end to a very tense and climactic scene, but Gordon was alive.
And you believe it, and you could believe Gordon was dead because Nolan sort of set this up that it was, Batman in this hyper-realistic world. So theoretically, anything could happen, right? Like aside from Batman, having to remain alive, Gordon potentially being killed off is something plausibly believable. So, but both great scenes in a phenomenal movie, and there's not much more you could say about that other than heap its praises. Okay, so next we've got The Dark Knight Rises, and So the scene that I've got again in a movie where there's a plethora of great scenes, it's got to be the final battle between Batman and Bane in the midst of the cops and all of Bane's you know squadron, if you want to call them that. Like in broad daylight, like it was just an absolute war. Like, and it was an assault. Like you're watching it, and again, watching these movies in IMAX, which I did, you're immersed in this thing, so you feel like you're in the midst of it all. And after everything Batman had been through up until that point, to see him finally like get the better of Bane, right? And again, in doing so, showing off his intelligence by I gotta damage the mask because that's giving him that's allowing him to breathe and giving him the extra oomph to kind of kick my ass. So if I take out that mask, then I can take him out. So it shows Bruce's prowess physically, but also mentally as well. That's why I like that scene. And then so that was mine. It was just it was like some massive war epic, right? It's just like wow, what am I watching? So
I remember seeing the set photos of them filming that scene, and I was like, wow, this looks massive.
Yeah.
And you got all the cops against Bane's crew.
Yeah,
it's really big. Good scene.
it's phenomenal. Yeah. What was yours?
So for this movie, I chose Bruce rising from the pit. I remember reading Nightfall as a kid. I read the comics and I read the novelization of the comics. One summer trip that I took with my family, and so I had always wanted to see that brought to the big screen.
Mm-hmm.
And when you see Bane break Batman's back in this movie, and you see him get tossed into the pit, he's discarded and left and forgotten. But then he's able to somehow gain the strength and the will to do something that nobody's ever done before, and that's make it out of that pit. Well, one person has done before, which was Bane.
Yeah.
But it just shows his will, his strength, his determination. And you have everyone, all the other prisoners of the pit, chanting for him, and that creates a really like ominous kind of like soundtrack behind his attempt to get up. And of course, he slips and falls down and smacks back into the wall, the side of the pit. But he gets back up and goes again. So yeah, you're right. There are a lot of good scenes in this movie, so it's tough to choose one, but that's my favorite.
And you know what? The music aids that scene that you're talking about so well. Like, I mean, you're rooting for him because Bruce Wayne's Batman, but on top of that, that music, you'll root for anybody to climb out of whatever hardship they're going through. Even if you can't stand the person, you'd root for him, right? So, but yeah, the music was great as well in that scene. Maybe that'll be an episode in the future. Favorite musical cues from Batman scores. We could do that. Elfman would have 3/4 of them. No, I'm kidding. There's so many, but Elfman would be up there. All right, so BVS, take it away.
Oh man, I like me some BVS, man. Especially the Ultimate Edition, the extended edition. I think it fills in the movie.
The best version, yeah.
With a lot of stuff that you miss out of the original version. But one scene that I think towers above everything else is the Martha rescue scene. This is the Batman fight scene that I had been waiting, I guess, 30 something years to see. He is tactical. He's brutal. Every strike and every move that he makes is calculated. And it's I know so much of this was done not by Ben Affleck, but by his stunt double, Richard Citrone. And Richard, I think, deserves all the credit and all the praise in the world for this scene because they make it look so good. this is our introduction to Affleck's Batman and what he's capable of, and he's capable of quite a lot. But yeah, that's my favorite scene in this movie.
Yeah, I mean, to that point, and some could argue still to this day, that's the best Batman fight scene on film, no question about it. So definitely, that was one of my options. But since you chose that one, I have my second option, which was right at the beginning of the movie or early on, when they are recreating the scene from Man of Steel where buildings are getting toppled over by heat vision and the battle between Superman and Zod. We see Bruce Wayne in Metropolis witnessing all this, and he's going through the damaged city trying to help escort people away from the danger, and he sees one of the Wayne Enterprises employees that's in Metropolis, sort of underneath the rubble. He helps save him, but then he runs in even more into the chaos when he notices a little girl, a piece of the building that's teetering, a pillar of the building that's teetering, is about to fall on this little girl, and he dives in and slides in and rescues her, and then says, let's go find your mother. And he's like, where's your mother? And she points up to the damaged building, and Bruce just hugs her and kind of looks up, all angry and pissed off as he would. Those scenes of Batman, while everybody else is running away from the danger, but Bruce is running towards the danger without his costume and without his gadgets, shows you the hero that Bruce Wayne is in a movie that's going to later position him for 3/4 of it as an antagonist. So I really appreciate this particular scene because it shows the heroism of Bruce Wayne. So I really like that scene.
It's a good scene. You're right. It's a good introduction to Zack Snyder's interpretation of the Bruce Wayne character.
Yeah. So for Justice League, which is the next film, I was going to go with an action scene, but I'm not. I'm going to go with a more personal scene. It's from the theatrical. I know people are going to yell and scream over that, but I don't care.
How could you?
I know it's blasphemy, but here it is. It's the scene where Barry is all out of sorts when they've tracked down Steppenwolf to the silo or wherever the hell he is, and he's got all those people captured, and sort of Barry's kind of like intimidated or a little bit scared or what have you, and he's like, to confess, I've never done this before. I usually just push people out of the way. What am I supposed to do? And he's like, focus on one. Just save one, and then you'll know what else to do. You'll know what to do afterwards. I like that because that's how I imagine Batman would be with a Robin in this universe. And training and fighting beside a younger crop of heroes. So I really like that aspect of the scene. That's something that we hadn't seen Batman do since 1997. So seeing him mentor somebody and give them that heroic, that guidance and that heroic advice was a plus for me that I really, really liked. And it sort of kind of sets up their relationship, kind of what we're going to see in The Flash between Ben Affleck's Bruce and Ezra Miller's Barry Allen. So, I really enjoy that scene. So kudos to Affleck for that. What about you for your Justice League scene, Chris?
My favorite scene it comes from Zack Snyder's Justice League, and it's the nightmare scene, which pays off what had been shown in the nightmare sequence in BVS, and which was going to lead to additional scenes in further movies, which never obviously ended up coming around. But this shows Batman leading our group of ragtag heroes and some not even heroes because Deathstroke and Joker are there.
Yeah.
But he's leading the resistance against Darkseid and Superman, who is now working for Darkseid. So this shows how dark things could possibly get. It kind of it relates back to Cyborg's vision that he had earlier in the movie when when he touched the mother box and saw what could possibly become, and then this happens later. But this is one of the additional scenes that Zack Snyder threw in when they did additional photography for it. So, I really like how it's shot. Apparently Affleck and Leto weren't even on set together, and they make the scene look as if they're having a conversation with each other. But yeah, this is a dark premonition of what the world could be if Superman ever were on the wrong side of things.
And it was cool, even though we saw it, but we didn't really see it. But to have this iteration of Batman and that iteration of the Joker have a meeting on screen, because we kind of saw it in Suicide Squad, but they didn't interact. Where here they're interacting, and I feel that if you're a director and you're going to do a Batman movie or a Batman related movie, you're going to want there should be a Batman and Joker interaction at some point in your film series. So I'm glad that was able to be achieved with Zack Snyder's take on Justice League. And also, I do really dig the way Affleck's Batman looks in that trench coat nightmare outfit.
It's pretty sweet.
Yeah. So, good choice. And that brings us to the most recent iteration of Batman, Robert Pattinson's The Batman. And so, Chris, what is your favorite scene from that film?
My favorite scene from The Batman is the police precinct escape scene. Well, I mean, the whole scene, not just the escape. But it's when Batman is laying on a table in what looks like a police interrogation room, and they're shining a light in his eyes, trying to see if he's responsive at all. And then one of the officers goes to remove the cowl, and Batman wakes up and freaks out. And everybody in the room wants a piece of Batman except Gordon. Gordon is the only one who's standing up for them. Even when the guy's like, Jim, you're still going to stand up for this guy?
Yeah.
Like, he's still... And then, so Gordon kind of like hatches this little scheme in order to help Batman get out. He wants the room just to the two of them so he can talk to Batman one-on-one. And then he's like, hey, man, you're going to have to punch me to get out of here. So Batman like decks him one good time, and Gordon gives him the key to lock the door behind him. So Batman takes off out of the room, uses his grapple gun to, as we've seen from other Batman movies in the past. I think this is the first time he does it in this movie, but he uses it to ascend up through the middle of the staircase. And then when he reaches the top of the building, he goes into his little squirrel suit and flies off to safety. Well, safety, because as he ejects the parachute, he gets caught on the bridge and tumbles to the ground. So this is still a Batman who hasn't quite worked out all the kinks of all of his gadgets yet, but he still has some really cool toys that he's trying to use to help him get out of sticky situations. But this is, kind of it's showing the bonding of the Gordon and Batman characters, how they trust each other and will lean on and even protect each other.
Which is, to this point, probably my second favorite iteration of the Batman-Gordon relationship. It could, ultimately, by the time Matt Reeves is done with his proposed trilogy, could end up being my favorite version of Batman-Gordon, depending on how it goes. But right now, it's my second favorite. Have you seen the re-edit of that precinct scene that you're talking about, with the some of the theme music from Batman '66 and the the POW visual.
I have not.
Somebody did it on YouTube, and surprisingly, it works. I liked it. I dig it. I dug it. It was pretty funny. Track it down if you can. You'll have a laugh. Okay, so my scene from this movie, again, in a movie full of them, right? Great Batman scenes. It was hard to pick, but I picked the scene in the third act where Batman dives in to the flooding Gotham Square Garden and rescues a whole heap of Gotham citizens that, if Batman wasn't there to lead them out of danger, would have probably drowned. And he's got the light and he's guiding them out. And the first person that he rescues is the young kid that he saw at the crime scene at the beginning of the film, right? With a bright red light and the music, the Michael Giacchino score, kicking in to high tempo in that moment, and then right up until the very end where he's waiting for that young girl to get airlifted, medevaced out of there, and he's holding her hand and waiting until they lift her out. The reason why I like those moments so much is because I think this is really the transition from vengeance vigilante, that calls himself Vengeance, to heroic Batman.
Yep.
And yes, Batman is dark. Yes, he operates in the shadows. But remember, Batman uses fear to scare the shit out of criminals. He is a symbol of hope to the citizens of Gotham. And these scenes show that fantastically. So that's why I chose that particular segment of the film. I think it's fantastic, and it just left me anticipating watching this version of Batman grow even more so into the the character that we're expertly familiar with at this point. So
yeah, it's showing Batman more in a hopeful light and not like a scary light.
Yeah. Which there needs to be a balance. It can't just be all one or all the other, right?
Well, criminals should fear him,
Absolutely,
but everyone else should look up to him with hope and optimism.
Like a 5-year-old should not be scared shitless of Batman, right? A thief, a killer should be, but not a 5-year-old. So there you go. That pretty much wraps up our list of favorite Batman scenes throughout his live action film appearances. Yeah. I'm sure come June 16th we will be adding to that list if the Flash has done their job right.
I'm going to see it on June 17th, so everybody stay out of my DMs.
Yeah, I will not spoil it for you the day before. Once I see it, I will not.
I gotta wait for my kids. I can't see it early without them.
I will give you a thumbs up. I will give you a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Chances are it's going to be a thumbs up, unless they really screwed the pooch, which I doubt. But that's as much as I will divulge to you. But until we get a chance to add to this list with scenes from the Flash, as far as our Batmen are concerned, you can talk with Chris and I about Batman on social media. So, Chris, where do they track you down?
I'm on Twitter, as previously mentioned. My screen name is Commodore Schmidlap, so you can just look that up, or you can use my actual which is Chris N. Harrelson. And I've started playing around on YouTube more, so if anybody comments on the video on YouTube, I'll be in the comments there. I'm starting to figure that out too. My kids are way into YouTube, a lot more than I am. I'm still learning it. I'm learning the landscape.
That's usually how it goes. All right, awesome. And if you want to track me down, the Twitter handle is @Adam_LeafsFan. The podcast network has its own Twitter handle @MMNPDC. Chris previously mentioned the Facebook group. Click that. I will add, which is linked in the description below. Click it. I'll add you. We can continue the conversation there. But until next time, remember that Batman will always have heroic moments on film, and they will last forever. From his first big heroic rescue or entrance to the last. So long, everybody.